Coming up, we review round one in the Netball Super League as Pulse, Forest, Lightning and Rhinos claim the round one bragging rights. We pick out some of our high points from the first weekend. And for the netball nerds, Chloe gets her tactics board out. Hello and welcome along. Chloe, it is actually less than a week since we had our bumper season preview, which is timeless, by the way. Everyone can still check in on that as we break down all the teams. And here we are, looking back on round one already.
I know, and what a round it was, Paul. There was everything in that. It was like a smorgasbord of netball delight, wasn't it?
Was.
Delighted to be back here with you, obviously, ticking through that. And I didn't know netball nerds. Yeah, that's our little community, isn't it, of our tacticians and
I think of all the things we try and do, and we spread our net wide. I think that the tactics board certainly enthralls me. I'm usually staring into my screen at it, and we certainly know that our avid listeners engage with it as well. And what's under the microscope today? A little teaser for everybody.
I'm trying to think of a tease, but I can't. I'm just going to say the words Zara Everitt, a wing defence masterclass.
There we go. Now stick around for that. We'll get to all the games. We'll go through all four from the opening weekend, and I think the way we're going to try and do this through the season is we're going to try and pick out maybe the biggest game of the weekend or the game that had the most talking points or storylines. We'll get stuck into that one, and then we'll spin through the rest before we round off the episode with a bit of a look ahead, to the next round of fixtures. But to start with, Chloe, I think we always like to check in on some news, and we kind of have everything that we need right now. What were your overall thoughts coming out of round one? One thing I looked at just before we came on was that there's been almost 80,000 views of the three games that were on Sky Sports, which from a streaming and a visibility point of view is really, really positive. Like, I think we should take that away. Obviously, still some teething issues. Should we be allowed to call them teething issues? I don't think we should. But yeah, I think the fact that people are watching and those numbers are going up is really.
Yeah, I mean, my experience of round one was really shaped by the fact that I did go to the Copper Box and I did watch Pulse Thunder, and there was an enormous crowd. It was skewed slightly towards the younger sort of schoolgirl, so the pitch was off the charts when Pulse were on the charge, but it was amazing to see that, to have that kind of atmosphere for such a sort of heavy, weighty, meaty clash, whatever we want to call it. I think we hyped it up pretty hard, but that was really nice to see and to feel that. Really hard, though, at the end of the game, having sort of absorbed it and really enjoyed it, I went straight to the www.nsl.com, Netball SL, whatever it is, and the stats were, I mean, I don't know, there was a glitch or something, and there still is the glitch, and that was so just irritating. I was irritated straight away. I texted you straight away, and I was like, here we go. So yeah, and then after that, obviously sat down and I watched the next three games on Saturday. There were some streaming issues across those as well, so I was like, oh, here we go. Irritating again on that front, because I think Claire Jones said it.
It shouldn't happen.
No, it shouldn't happen. And it's that asking everybody to get professional, and you can't deliver something professionally like that on your website and on your stream. And it wasn't even just that necessary technical difficulties. The lighting was off. I felt like I couldn't see the game for the start of the Lightning fixture. It was just, I don't know. I just always think sometimes it's really worth like imagining if I were walking into the room and you had the netball on, what would my very first impressions of what I saw be? And would this be a sport that I would then want to sit down and watch with you? And I kind of had that experience. I had the Lightning game on with some family round, and a friend walks in, and I just, and they went to Loughborough University. So they were like, oh, Loughborough playing. And then they were like, what? Like, are they playing in a cave? And I was like, well, I think these are things we are trying to invite new people in all the time. And, that being the first impression is not a 10 out of 10 one. And it's something I think people ought to carry with them as they go through presenting this league forwards. But how about you? What do you reckon?
No, I agree with you. I was writing the match report. I couldn't get to the game on Friday night because of some childcare bits and bobs. And as I was making my notes, I kept looking at the stats section, because on commentary, Nia and Ebony were going through it, and they were talking about gains that were made and pickups. And obviously there was a lot of defensive work being done in the game, and you kind of want to be able to illustrate those points, and just weren't able to do it. We should say it feels like a website mistake more than a stats mistake at the moment, because we have asked Netball Super League for some details on the games, which could just help us kind of illustrate some of the points we want to make. And I put in our notes for our running order, I said, look, ordinarily, opening weekend of any sporting season, you'd kind of say a few teething issues, let's kind of wait and see. But really, I reckon if you listen to our first episode last year of round one, the conversation would be almost identical. And that's just not good. But look, we don't want to keep bleating on about that, because unfortunately it kind of hasn't changed. Some big picture takeaways, first of all. 7 of the 8 teams named an injury or an illness replacement, which I thought, given your very apt sign off in our preview about wanting everyone to be fit and well. Now, look, outside of, we think most players are okay, and it's not too serious, but it does speak to maybe the preparation that the teams have had. Not ideal. And obviously, 2 of the 4 games, bonus point defeats. They went the distance, and we want to see that in Super League games.
Yeah, I can attest to the fact that I saw Elliot McCormick and Tyler Orr. They were with the squads for Pulse and Thunder. So, it does seem interesting. And I guess it is sport, and maybe clubs are learning their lessons as they go about, when you're down to a 10. We've had people come on to this podcast and talk about the challenges of that and what that looks like actually in practice for training. We knew Harriet Jones was out with concussion ahead of time as well. So Rhinos did play without her and won without her. We should also say, I just want to circle us back quickly to the stats issue, Paul, because this has affected the fantasy team that we have. And I really want to shout these guys out, because we actually have our own, if you're listening to the podcast and want to get stuck in, or you have a team and you want to join our club, we have a kind of a club of fantasy league people. We're trying to come up with a name. We have a code for that, but interesting to see them as well having to deal with the stat issues. This is another side effect of what's going on. Not just us wanting to talk and report about the game, but also, this extra element where they have to face, waiting still for the stats to be totally correct, because they are coming slowly and slowly. It does feel like since I last saw it, there were some updates, but yeah, irritating on that front as well. But Paul, we should say, what's the code? Do you know the code? Is it in your notes?
Is it in my notes? Yeah, we have. So the name of these guys, UK Fantasy Netball League, they reached out to us a while ago. We're in the league with the Battle of the Pods. There are 6 of us in that. So you and I have picked a team, which, we went back and forth about quite a bit when it came to picking. We have our own league, which at the moment 16 people are in. So we're delighted to those of you that have joined. If you want to join, I'm going to read out the code now, which is ULFUJXUM. Very imaginatively titled Netball Unlocked is our league. But yeah, you can play along with us over the course of the season. And Chloe, how are you feeling about our team? Do we need to name it, first of all?
Yeah, I think,
what it is.
What is it? Let's go. I think I remember it off the top of my head. Will you correct me if I'm wrong?
Yeah,
but I'm confident. I'm confident in this team, actually, Paul. And we did play the numbers, didn't we? Because that's actually how you have to do a fantasy team. It's not just about your favourite players. You've got to think strategically.
You do. So the main points, I think, here are that a couple of the players, you're only allowed 2 players, from each team. So you couldn't have 3 Thunder players or 4 Pulse players or whatever you might like to be. So you have to be selective. And I think there are a couple of players who you can be clever with. That's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to give away other people a chance.
I mean, when I read out the team, it's going to be quite obvious.
It is going to be quite obvious, yeah.
But we have, obviously, Rolene Stricker, who's our captain.
Correct.
Liv Cheen.
Yes, our goal attack.
Susie Liversidge, wing attack.
No.
Who did we put?
We put Lois Pearson in there.
Lois Pearson. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Shrewd. That was shrewd of us.
That was shrewd.
Centre, Hannah Layton.
No, Hannah Joseph.
Hannah Joseph. This is a mess. Then it's Hannah Layton. Then it's Fumi Fadoju. And then it's Samari Visser.
So Samari Visser, goal defence, and Fumi Fadoju, goalkeeper, is how we've done that. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I made a complete mess of that.
Yeah, you were very confident as well then.
I was.
But good fun. A really, really good initiative. And yeah, another reason that hopefully the numbers on everything gets sorted and the guys at UK Fantasy Netball can kind of give everyone an updated league table, because we're all waiting with bated breath to see how we perform.
Not that we're competitive.
Absolutely not. No. Yeah. So I think from that point of view, there isn't too much else in the way of news. I was a little bit disappointed we didn't get some proper build up to the first game of the weekend. I know that production costs are everything, and I don't expect sort of full build up for everything. Mavericks Forest had 15 minutes of build up on the court side. That was great. I thought the Friday night game, essentially the biggest game of the weekend, just kind of having 5 minutes and going straight into it for the first game of the season was a bit disappointing. We obviously had the Super Cup last week, where it was kind of loads of great VT and loads of interviews and stuff. But we all know that kind of Friday night was really the start of the season. So I was a little bit disappointed in that regard. But then I'm a bit of a kind of nerd. Sometimes I like the build up and the anticipation and the kind of stuff that happens off the court almost as much as on it. But then I'm a journalist and I like narratives, as I said last week.
But I think that's also justified, because I think there was so much chat coming into the game about the nature of Thunder. Like, it was really overstated by quite a lot of people, the disappointment, inverted commas, of their Super Cup performance and where they would be. And then obviously you have your reigning champion. So I would have thought, like you, also the chance to set up your stall for a season ahead. Like, you don't even just have to focus on the game that there is. But I mean, I was in the arena, so I wasn't watching it as you were watching it. But yeah, it just a bit of a miss, right? Let's call it that.
Yeah, just a bit disappointing. But look, I think it was a really good weekend of netball, plenty to get stuck into. So shall we get on with it, Chloe? Should we get stuck into part 2 of this show, which I've entitled The Big Game?
Oh, the big game.
So, yeah, look, we did enough talking about it. London Pulse, Manchester Thunder, the Copper Box. Really great game. Lots to get stuck into. Shout out to Ebony and Nia in commentary. Did a brilliant job. And yeah, I think from a team news point of view, we were maybe more intrigued to see what Thunder did in attack. Pulse was pretty much as you would expect. Gracie Smith started at centre. Tyler Raw was out with a minor injury. I mentioned that I felt their next gen building was good. The fact that Phoebe Maslin was their sub, I think, bodes well if injury strikes, and she was on the bench. No Leah McCormick for Thunder. Similarly, someone who's sort of been around the Super League and has played Super League, she was able to come in and come onto the bench. In the end, back and forth affair that Thunder got the better, Pulse got the better of.
Yeah, I think it was. I think. Yeah, what do I think?
Where do you want to start? Yeah, where do you want to start?
Let's start with Thunder, because the attention was really on them coming into the game, and Sophie Fawns and what that was going to look like, because obviously Fawns had not been in the Super Cup. One of the things I learned off the back of the game, Paul, was that was Sophie Fawns' first 60 minutes of professional netball, because the way she'd been used in SSN was sort of for impact and really for shooting, to put up super shots. So actually, as a complete performance, I thought from her it was a really strong debut. The accuracy on the shots was pretty amazing. And then just seeing being near the court, you can see the vision on some of her passes and the speed at which some of the balls get delivered. I think that's that kind of professionalism that she'll have experienced over in Australia, and what some of our Australian guests come and talk about, the basics being really well executed. There were some flashes where it was like a bullet. It was so quick. But interesting really to see the way that Thunder attack kind of evolved and changed throughout the game, because it did move and shift around quite a bit. We saw her with Elle Cardwell to start, then we saw her with Lois Pearson, and then we saw her back with Elle Cardwell to finish. Then the wing attack centre options were changing quite a bit for Thunder as well. So clearly they are still working things out and feeling each other out, and I'm not too surprised, because I think Karen Gregg said before the game that they'd had 5 sessions ahead of Super Cup together as a group, and that was something she'd also come on our podcast and said as well when we were looking at that, previewing that South Africa series. So I think you could see that very much still, but a real big improvement on the Thunder that we saw from the Super Cup. Down the back end, I think you and I both, we talked about it before we hopped on, but Nicola Smith really had her moments in that game as well. An unbelievable kind of presence, particularly with her wingspan. Looking at the stats that Netball Super League sent us, I think these are really, really cool for Smith. We are looking at, she had 1 pickup, 6 penalties, 3 rebounds, 4 deflections, 2 intercepts, 6 gains, and 1 unforced error. That, to have 6 penalties and have that impact on the game is really big. So I thought that was a really cool performance from her, particularly off the back of the South Africa series where she hadn't played that many minutes. There seems to be a bit of a rocket inside of her for sure. And then, yeah, I think one of the things that struck me most about Thunder, though, was that was perhaps not their identity as it normally is converting turnover ball. So of live turnovers, Thunder converted 56% of what they gained, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you did that work yourself, didn't you? So you said you watched it back.
Yeah, made some notes as we went along, and there's slightly different from there's a differentiation between live turnovers and turnovers of a restart, so off a back line or whatever. But yeah, 56% is not where you're going to be if you're going to beat a team like Pulse. You should treasure your ball in possession, but when they did turn the ball over, they kind of threw it away quite often, obviously, the 44% of the time. And I think put that in the perspective of the final result, that could have swung the game. And there were early moments where Thunder were leading. So interesting. And I think Pulse were really counter that, were really, really good at that. They were really, I mean, that's what I think for me, that's kind of what they've developed into specialists for, is looking after what they've got and releasing it well into the goal. But how about if I chuck Pulse over to you, Paul? What did you think of them?
Yeah, I think you make a good point. I think defensively, you know, we never fail to be amazed by Fumi. It's why she's in our team. But again, you mentioned the numbers, but like 13 deflections, 2 interceptions, 5 gains, you know, it's always like a ridiculously off the charts number. Hallie got player of the match, and I think that defensive identity that Pulse are always about is going to stand them out. I actually felt they moved the ball through the court really well. Sam Bird said in her interview afterwards that she felt they could have taken a little bit more care at times, and I think that's fair. But I think that's probably fair of most teams this weekend, given, you know, that they haven't all had lots of training sessions. Some teams have had players here, there, and everywhere. I picked Gracie Smith as my number 1 player to watch this year. She started as a centre, and I think she's gonna be unreal as the season goes on. And again, you pointed this out to me. And when it came to feeds, Gracie Smith had 35 and Alicia Scholes had 28. And it felt to me like Scholes was feeding kind of almost non-stop, which I think speaks to the way Pulse were able to probably capitalise on the points that you've just made, as far as sort of Thunder not being able to do that. We got a little tantalising glimpse of Kamahela Maseka, if I've said that correctly. I've taken your lead there. She came on in the third quarter for Sophie Kelly, and I thought there was a really exciting glimpse of what she's going to be about and how she can perhaps offer something a little bit different. Sophie Kelly, plenty of confidence from her, which we probably expected after Super Cup weekend. But really, for me, one of the stars was Zara Everitt, and I know you want to get into that in a little bit more detail. She, for us, is one of the unsung heroes in the Super League.
Yeah, I wanted to actually just pick out Gracie Smith as well, because I think Thunder were doing a lot of work on Liz Scholes to really try and hold her up, particularly Taylor McKevitt. It seemed like that was the job. Yeah. And she did a pretty good job at that.
Really early, that was very, very close, wasn't it? There wasn't nothing in.
Yeah, and I think to sort of, because Pulse have such a strong defensive unit, their attack is going to be oversupplied. So if you can convert that and do your bit and attack, then that's a winning team. And it just feels like Liz is obviously such a big part of how that works, because she finds Liv Cheen so well. But one of the things that kind of struck me, I think it was the back end of quarter 2 during Super Shot, there were 4 times in a row Liz caught Gracie Smith going to the pocket on a sweep. So every time it went to Gracie Smith, who was then able to feed Cheen that way, or Kelly. And I think the pocket is a really interesting, I think I counted at the times where I was focusing on Zara Everitt when I was going back, but I tried to make a note as and when I saw Smith in the pocket. She was there maybe 15, 16 times. So I think and there are a couple of moments where Carter like challenged her up in the air on that back and up. And obviously Smith is really tall. Like she's for a 17-year-old, really, really tall. And I think Carter like won maybe one or two of those occasions. But if I'm another team looking at how to unpick London Pulse, I don't think it's enough to just hold Liz Scholes anymore. You have to take on that presence of Smith and really hold her up. And because clearly Pulse went to her if they couldn't get to Scholes, as you can see by the numbers. So that was just something really striking, given that it was her full 60 minutes at centre, to see that sort of dominance that she had in the pocket. But yes, Zara Everitt, this has been a delight because I don't know if you could tell, I used to be a wing defence. So when someone does wing defence really, really well, this is something that you have to enjoy looking at. Okay, so as you can see, Paul, I've given this a really imaginative title. Zara Everitt, a really, really, really good wing defence, brackets, especially in this game. And actually, this wasn't because of this, but it was because of the performance. But it was interesting that on the Sky Sports Off the Court podcast, when Tamsin and Tracy Neville were sort of putting a downer on the notion that anybody this season in the NSL can perform well enough to get themselves into the Commonwealth Games squad, they were like, that's not very realistic. But they did try and consider who, based on their criteria in the podcast that they talked about, could possibly even just inch their way maybe into that squad. And Tracy mentioned Zara Everitt. So I just want to put that in everyone's mind before I start. But really, there were three things that I thought that Zara really stood out on. And I guess a wing defence, it goes without saying, but I will say it is one of those really underrated positions. It's often, you've got to dull the wing attack as best you can. It's often a losing battle, and you're often involved in setups. And you have in your arsenal a bunch of weapons, really, as any netball defender, but particularly as a wing defence. And what really impressed me about Everitt in this game was her use of all of them and the effectiveness of them. So I wanted to start firstly with the complete toolkit. That's the subhead, if you will, to this exercise. Yeah, a really, really good wing defence, the complete toolkit. So I've got some clips from the game. They are slowed down and I'll try and talk them through. I'll do my best for those listening, but if you can get it on video, I would really recommend that. So this is in early on in the game, 4-2 Pulse with the ball. And really, I wanted to draw attention to Everitt on Lois Pearson. Pearson is at wing attack for the first half, and the way she sort of dictates what Pearson is doing. So she's just going to track her, and really, force the decisions to go. I guess you only have 3 seconds to get the ball. So can I make it that Lois isn't exactly the ideal option? Okay, yeah, perfect. So as you can see, Zara has pushed her up. Taylor McKevitt is then looking out wide. And in that process, because she's done that and kept Pearson busy, Fumi's able to get a deflection. It doesn't land in Pulse hands. So back on defence straight away. And Zara already, Everitt, she's holding Pearson. They're locked into each other, as you can see. And that is just pain. So Pearson then tries the back cut. Zara tracks her, tries the front cut. Zara goes back the other way. And then she does this thing which Everitt, I think, is really good at. It's dictating the position that she wants her wing attack to be in. And one of the things that Everitt does really well, and is always encouraged in netball, if you can, as a defender, is to push your player into the person with the ball. So you really make that pass off really unattractive, or at least make as little gain on court as possible. So Everitt here has forced Lois right into Cardwell. Absolutely not an option. So then Pearson naturally has that front space on the transverse line. She's going to receive the ball, and Everitt's going to go, okay, well, I'll allow you that, but then I'll be back on you for the second phase. So immediately comes and sits straight in that Pulse box that we talked about a lot last season. And then she's just going to stretch it out, and Pearson can't see any options. 1, 2, 3, 4 Pulse players. So she resets it. And this is, Everitt has exactly the right idea, just the timing is slightly off. But she's going to now, because she's on that diagonal, come in and try and pounce on that ball, on the transverse line, back to Pearson. It doesn't work. She doesn't get there. Pearson gets the ball, but she turns around straight away and she's on the 3 foot mark over the circle, tall as you like as a pencil. And then what happens is she forces the ball from Pearson at the top into Amy Carter in the pocket. And Gracie Smith actually gets a hand to this. So that effort to put your 3 foot mark up is going to have, some kind of implication right there. Here's another one that I thought was really cool. Again, straight away, before I even play the clip, you can see that Everitt is on Pearson, just riding her like a backpack. And this is a centre pass. And so she stops Pearson popping over the line. And I think Pearson goes, okay, that's not the play, so I'm not going to come over here. I'm going to hang back. And Everitt is just waiting on her. And Pearson is somebody that has really great explosive speed. So, Everitt knows that if I hold on to her, I've got more of a chance of keeping up with her. And I believe here, Pearson tries to back cut, but it's a ball that Amy Carter does not want to give, particularly because there's a load of empty space and the box is beginning to form, that classic pulse box. So then Everitt tracks, front cut, back cut. And then what she's done there is because she's tracked back with Pearson and then Pearson's played her, there's actually here Adio comes and gets the ball. So she creates that opportunity. The box is there. Carter has to go across it. And that's when Adio goes, right, that's mine. And Everitt is there as well for the pickup. So that's a nice little team defence, but that's hustle. That's hustle that's got Everitt that ball. And these are the early stages of the game. So this is when everybody's figuring themselves out. Here I picked quarter 3, 39-33. Another really great example of some Everitt hustle. And you can see this is when Nat Metcalf is on. Now, to me, Nat Metcalf does not match up very well against Zara Everitt. And this is one of the things I was talking about earlier about Everitt using her body to push players into where she wants them to be, to really dictate that space. So Metcalf has the ball. She's going to send it back to the transverse line.
Yeah.
And then again, Everitt's like, okay, if you're going to go up there to get that ball, and Metcalf has gone really high for that. She's like, all right, I'm going to let you have that. I'm going to help Smith here cover that second option. So as soon as Metcalf turns around, she can't turn and release it because her Thunder player is covered. And then Metcalf releases out here to Lois Pearson, who's on the sideline. So really, really pushed up against it. And this is where Everitt's going to run. She's going to pick up Metcalf and she's going to say, no, I'm going to keep you right there. And look at that. If you can see, there is, for me, Everitt, then there's Pearson and Metcalf, and there's the sideline. They are absolutely sandwiched in that sideline. And Everitt's just going to keep Metcalf there, keep her there. And Metcalf doesn't know what to do. She can't. And then Sophie Fawn's there in that classic. She actually drives through the box. That's how you beat the box. You cut through it. So she's come out and she wants to release the ball. But if you're looking at what Fawns has to face, you can see Smith is in front of the centre. Everitt's got Metcalf back in the pocket with no space. There's a front cut. Sophie Fawns drives herself into the circle. That's really a nice play from Fawns. And then she'll go for goal. But that's slow. That's painful. Excellent.
Yeah.
One final
it's that
one.
ability to make it hard, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's what Everitt is just a machine. And I think this is the thing. Again, it's 10 minutes left of the game. Pulse of 47-39 up. And she's not relenting at any point. So in this clip, she's actually on Nat Metcalf again. And she does that thing. She comes round. Defending on the circle edge is literally a nightmare if you're a centre or wing defence. But sometimes you just have to go for it to remind your attacking player that you are there and that you are ready. So she does that. She comes, reaches across, takes the ball. So it goes off to a sideline. Everitt's like, thought maybe that came off Metcalf, but all right, I'll come back. She comes straight onto the court and immediately 3 foot mark, right? She's up. She hasn't stopped. Metcalf sort of balks, doesn't know where to give it, gives it over the top of Everitt. And then Metcalf does this thing. Again, I think we know this about her play, but she drives to where she's given the ball to be that re-offer. So Everitt's like, okay, I'm going to follow you all the way up and I'm going to track you all the way back. So that gives Pearson, that's probably 2 seconds. Pearson has to release it up to the transverse line. And then Everitt jumps to follow Pearson. And she's going to come 3 foot mark because she knows that ball wants to go in the circle. Doesn't go because Pearson releases it back to Metcalf. So then Everitt gets herself right in front of Pearson. And then she's going to go again because there's been because Scholes has tipped the ball off McKevitt, and she's straight in there for the bin chicken, right for the afters. Is there anything here I can grab? It's relentless. It's relentless stuff. And that is like all 4 quarters what Zara Everitt was doing. And I should say with 6 penalties. She was really clean in this game.
She was very clean, yeah.
Particularly because in games past, she hasn't always been so clean. That to me was something that really really stood out. This slide is playing her part because obviously as a wing defence, as we said at the top, it's not necessarily about just what you're doing as an individual, because it's very rare, well not very rare, but it's quite rare wing defence wins ball by themselves. They're often part of a unit, and we've talked about this pulse defence unit, but I just wanted to pick up a couple of clips where she does her bit to help her teammates shine. And we so often speak about Fadoju, and Adio got player of the match, but I just wanted to show here how Everitt sort of does her bit in that. So here we are. This is really early on, 2-1, quarter 1. I believe this is a centre pass. And so Smith has released the ball and Everitt is tracking Lois Pearson because Sophie Fawns has received it out in the corner. And then she's on Pearson, sandwiching her in. And then she can see Fawns looking over the top for that cross, like cross her channel, cross the middle third into that back third, into the pocket. There's a drive happening and Zara already seeing it. She's running back to do the back and up. And who's also seen it? Adio. So Adio comes up, contests it, and it's the sideline. So that's another one of, we're in a unit and we're all seeing the same things in our unit, and I'm going to be there. Like the earlier example of what she did, she's going to be there to support. Here, 4-3, again, another example of a centre pass where Zara Everitt is just a menace. And you can see, I paused it, but Amy Carter has 4 Pulse players, all in front of their players.
I bet it felt like 5 sometimes.
Yeah, to be fair, Liv Sheen actually is up on the transverse line as well, so it does look like 5. And that's going to be not held, but nearly held. It's so nearly held that the way Carter releases it, McKevitt can't get it. It will go down as an unforced error, but really that was properly forced. Everybody was pushing out. Here, again, another centre pass that I really wanted to pick up because Everitt here, this is a Pulse it's a trap. So they've let the Thunder attacking players go up to cross the third line to receive the ball. The 3 of them are going to hang back. They're going to let them do that because they're more interested in what's going on behind. And I think actually, if I'm not mistaken, Fadoju slightly broke on that centre third line. So she kind of, because you want to give the feeling that you're off. And so you've got a bit of a wall. And so that means it looks like right now that Elle Cardwell is free because all of these Thunder players are up high and the option is long. And then Elle Cardwell comes through the middle, but actually the ball goes out wide to Sophie Fawns, who's running, and Hallie Adio comes out on the fly to catch that. So again, part of a system that's delivering turnover or at least deflections that are just disrupting. And one final one here that I really, really like is, again, this is on a turnover, I believe, a Thunder turnover. This is Everitt is not even, she's going to pick up any player. So right now she's picking up Rayner. That's not technically the wing attack, but she's going to take her anyway because that's a player that's free. So let me cover you if you're doing my job somewhere else. And she can see Rayner's sort of driven back and then she's going to cut up. So Everitt's going to follow her for that. Straight up 3-foot mark. Rayner can't see over the top of it. So she sends it back to McKevitt. And then again, Everitt's looking, scanning. She's pointing to Smith to go into the box. And then she again sees that Pearson's basically got the ball up about 3 meters to the right of where Metcalf is. So Thunder have not gained any ground here. And then the Pulse players have moved naturally across to where Pearson now is with the ball. And then it's another lateral pass from Thunder to Emma Rayner. And at that point, Everitt picks up Pearson, who's running towards the circle. Pearson gets in the circle. Okay, fine. What am I going to do? I'm going to 3-foot mark. 3-foot mark. Ball goes back to the reset line. Back to Metcalf, who's picked it back up again. 3-foot mark. The pressure here is building. It's building. Pearson has the ball. 3-foot mark. And it goes out to the pocket. And it's intended to go to the pocket, but actually Smith gets a hand in, and it's a Pulse turnover. But how many times, Paul, did I say it went laterally there? And that's just that holding high, trying to build. And that's what our wing defence is so much a part of. And then this slide bit is called long through court balls, because Zara Everitt is really, really, really good at identifying who the correct pass is when there's a turnover from defence to attack. And she delivers really nice long bullet passes that often cover quite a lot of ground, which is so important for Pulse when they're on the charge, because I would say that's really their brand of attack. It's really fast, it's really powerful, and it's as few passes as possible. So you never really allow anyone else to set up. This is the last slide, but I picked out this one because this is where Zara Everitt does a blinder. So this is in the end of Q1. There are 10 seconds left. It's a backline. Adio's given it to our friend Everitt on the circle edge. Perfect. She immediately turns, releases to Smith, who's already timed that beautifully, that drive. And then Everitt comes back up to support, gets the lateral ball off Smith. And then, 5 seconds left on the clock? What does Everitt do? 1, 2, 3, huge shoulder pass over all the noise into Liv Sheen, who converts this. So that's actually a nice little goal assist for Everitt. But she's got that vision, and that's so important for the fast pace that Pulse have. So I've stopped sharing my screen there. But just I think a really complete wing defence performance to set up everybody else, to make them all look good.
Very good. And you look very good doing that as well, Chloe. It's excellent. What I think it always illustrates, one of the first things when I started covering netball, and I didn't have a huge idea about it, so a while ago now, and some might take conjecture whether I know anything about it now. One of the things Tamsin told me was that wing defence and wing attack are so crucial to the way the game is played, which if you're completely new to it, you would think, well, it's all about the goalkeepers and it's all about the goal shooters. But the more you watch, the more you understand how much those guys really influence it. And I think what you've illustrated there, and what I think Zara does brilliantly, maybe more than almost any other wing defence in the league, is play so intelligently. It's obviously you've used this description before about it being an invasive game and all those sorts of things about space and using your body to shut off angles and all those types of things. I think that's a real perfect illustration of one of the Super League's most underrated players who shone in a really big game. I know she's certainly not underrated by those who play against her and who play with her. But yeah, really, really good stuff, that. And yeah, a good performance from Pulse. They'll be delighted, and lots of them to take forward. And we shouldn't also lose sight of the fact that Thunder finished strongly as well to nick themselves a bonus point, and that might be massive come the end of the season.
Absolutely. I think the super shot run that Fawns and I think Cardwell got in one that just did that. They went from, I think there was like a 12 goal difference to shut it to 5. That's massive. The bonus point is absolutely massive. And I think generally there'll be lots for both teams to be excited about. Obviously, Pulse for the 3 points at home in front of a really boisterous crowd to get their title defence off to a strong start over a top 4 contending team. But I think Thunder also, they're not a team that you think when you watch that like, oh, they're really far behind or they're not gonna. No, there were just a few adjustments in there, and there's lots of positive individual performances. Sophie Fawns is really, really, really good at netball. Nicola Smith was putting in a great shift and, showing the world what a really good set of arms can do at the right time. I think that's what we saw from her. So just a really great starter for the netball in this league, I think, that game.
Yeah, good point on Fawns. I was on the train with Kira going to netball on Saturday and we watched the game back. And I said, right, watch this girl who's come over from Australia. Her feet are amazing. Her basics are superb. Just watch her for a week because we don't know how long we'll get her for over here in the UK. But yeah, really pleasing for both teams. And a good way to kick off the show. Right, on 3 other games to get through. They all took place on Saturday. But before we do that, we mentioned at the top of the show there's some streaming issues. We mentioned that there was also some issues as far as the stats are concerned. And actually, as we've been recording, Chloe, England Netball have shared a statement on Instagram.
Yes, they have. I'm going to read it out
Okay.
loud.
Yep.
We
I haven't heard
recognise.
this yet.
Okay, you haven't. We recognise that the streaming quality across some of the opening weekend Netball Super League matches didn't meet the standard we set for ourselves or for our sport, and we're sorry to fans who experienced issues. We're working closely with Sky, BBC Sport, and our production partner to review what happened and to ensure improvements are in place going forwards.
Okay. We got something similar last year, didn't we?
Yes.
Not from Super League, it was from Sky last year. So fingers crossed that things get better.
A bit of accountability from round one is not a bad place to start. But
I would agree
yeah.
with that, definitely. Yeah. I think, you know, there'll be some reaction, obviously, because people want an answer straight away. Quite often there isn't an answer straight away. My issue with more, a little bit like my issues with mainstream coverage of netball is this been going on for a really, really long time. So just, okay, let's wait and see would be how I just deal with that.
Agree.
Okay, onwards then for the rest of round one. We'll go in order that they took place. London Mavericks and Nottingham Forest. Now, this is the one game that I haven't been able to watch back a second time. I sort of watched a slightly delayed stream on the train on the way back from Durham. London Mavericks 59, Nottingham Forest 60. These two teams kind of were fairly evenly matched as far as the table was concerned last year. And this game went the distance, and our Fantasy League captain, Roland Stroika, coming up with the goods. Chloe, tell us about it. Let's get stuck into it.
Yeah, this is the first win for Nottingham Forest over London Mavericks. I think we did the preview of this round. Mavericks beat Forest both times, and kind of the secret why they got into that top four in the end over the Forest. But gosh, what can I say? Definitely a first round of NSL, this game. It was feisty, a bit fighty, so chaotic. I think the first centre pass got turned over and they got turned back over. And that was very much the nature of the game for a while. It was just a lot of a spilt ball, lots of mistakes, lots of really great defence. And I think I said that. They said big defence in the opening rounds is going to get you a win because attacks are still kind of feeling themselves out if they aren't already like together or well known. And a lot of the teams this year have new look front ends. But it was interesting because really Mavericks had the lead on Forest until the third quarter, where there was a change in the second quarter for Nay Retief at goalkeeper and Jada Pekova came off. Tash Pavlin and Retief really grew as a partnership. And I think that coupled with George Inga sort of, if I can may politely sort of say, falling a bit off a cliff in the third quarter for a substitution with Emily Andrews, that third quarter swing, Forest were able to kind of get back in it. And with Roland Stricker just shooting the lights out, I believe she was 100% in the unshot 1 point game. Just having a quick look.
I'm having a look as well.
Yeah. She was 100% in the 1 point game, including the final shot with the last 5 seconds, which nearly looked like a super shot. She was like just on the edge, shot that in, and that was obviously the most crucial shot of the whole game. But that ability to punish with such an accurate shooter at the back is just such an asset. That's why Rolene is such a Forest favourite. But I thought Mavericks had lots to be excited about as well. I mean, they were the team that was on the other side of these victories last season.
Yeah.
They were the ones nabbing final minute goals. So interesting, funny almost that they are on the losing end of a game like that. And really, it was quite something, the swinging that happened in the final quarter in terms of the goal scores, because Forest were actually 6 up with 2 minutes to go, and then it was tied with 12 seconds to go. So again, like that was that ability that both teams have to execute super shots as well, because Emily Andrews particularly accurate, George Inga was putting them in, Emma Thacker loves them as well. So just a really interesting meeting. I already can't wait to see the way they match up again next time, but I would say it was really chaotic as well.
I'm glad you said that, because that was my takeaway from watching it. My feeling is that I don't think you're going to want to take your eyes off these two teams this year, whether they're playing each other or whether they're playing anyone else, because you could see them getting hot for like 6 or 7 minutes and kind of stretching a lead out or bringing a game back, but then equally going a little bit cold for a period of time and losing a big lead. And this game perfectly encapsulated that from both teams, and probably no surprise that it came down to maybe who had the last shot of the game. Despite all the chaos that went before it, we're probably not surprised. And I don't think we'll be surprised when they play again later on this season if with 10 seconds left to go, it's in the hands of either a George Inga or a Roland Strojka to win the game. It does feel like that. Shout out to Susie Liversidge as well. I obviously spoke to her in the build up to the season. Another really, really strong performance at wing attack. She started there as well. We wondered if we maybe might see her at centre. It was Izzy Phillips who started at centre. And that Mavs defence that we thought was going to be really strong. On paper, Donahue, Golub and Quashie all lined up really, really well. And you know that they're going to go out and win you ball. It's just how that top end of the court does. Susie did her bit. And as you kind of really illustrated, it's quite how they iron out those bits and pieces. But I think there'll be stuff for Tamsin and Mickey to be pleased with after that. Like they were very much in the game against probably along with Pulse, one of the teams that is the most consistent from last year, right? Like that Forest team is kind of last year's team, really, give or take. A couple of little tweaks, but certainly the starting lineup: Pekova, Pavlin, Cooper, Leighton, Grierson, Dixon, Strojka. That team is the team that pretty much played last season. So again, a bit like you said with Thunder, I think Mavericks will take a lot out of that game, despite obviously being disappointed to have not taken the win. They do get a bonus point, and again, we know, and we're going to probably reference it every time someone gets a bonus point. It could be pretty crucial come the end of the season.
Yeah, I just wanted to underline Liversidge's performance because it felt like she handles the ball so much.
Yeah.
So considering that, she had 18 centre pass receives, 37 feeds, 2 penalties, 2 gains and 1 unforced error, and the gains were a pickup and interception. So as a wing attack, that I'm seeing 2 gains in the column is pretty impressive. And as you say, Izzy Phillips as well out at centre, that was, I think, one of the longest. Maybe it feels like it for Mavericks, at least, her first real run out at centre.
Yeah.
I thought she looked comfortable there. So that's really interesting for Mavericks, who obviously without Eli Ratu, who was in comms. But we can't really talk about this game. I mean, we spoke a little bit about Rolene, 11 super shots scored, and then player of the match, Tash Pavlin. She walked away with 1 rebound, 4 deflections, 2 intercept, 4 gains, 10 penalties. So I think if you're a defender and you're 10 and under and you're producing those kind of numbers, I think that's really clean and no unforced errors. So again, a really safe pair of hands, which I think is, I think errors individually and across the teams is something that's really important to see, where these teams go. According to these stats, Nottingham had 8 unforced errors versus Mavericks is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Right.
Also, actually, while we're talking about maths, I need to apologise, Paul, because somebody called me out on my percentage work. The super shot is in play for 33% of the game and not 25%, as I said.
Okay.
So apologies to that person. They were correct and I was wrong. Anyway, I should have put that right at the top. Just snuck it in here. It's not that I'm scared of accountability.
The loyal listener will be rewarded, right? The loyal listener gets rewarded.
Indeed. Chloe Merrill was wrong. That's okay. But yeah, so much to look forward to, I think, for these teams. And I thought a really great debut at Forest for Anae Retief. The numbers aren't massively there. It's not a shiny game like Pavlin's, but she really fronted up to Inga, I think, and that really kind of was the start of the decline of Inga's game before the sub was made, and really set Pavlin up very well. So we were talking about Forest's recruitment when we were previewing them. We didn't see Anya Williams. She didn't come on. And I'm not surprised because that game kind of felt so, given that Forest were chasing that game for so long. One thing, though, for the Dixon watchers, if I can call them that, there was some inaccuracy on the shot. She scored 8 goals, missed 5. There was 1 super shot attempted and 1 missed. So she shot overall at 62%.
Yeah. It's an
But
issue.
again,
It's an
I
issue.
think it is an issue. Unbelievable ball distributor though. So clearly, and walking, but it just feels very peculiar, I think, in a game of netball to have a goal attack like that. And we'll see how far it runs for Forest going forwards, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something to keep an eye on. I think of all the teams, it's the one where it looks, maybe Dragons when Georgia Rowe was playing. That we'll get onto that. That looked very different for Dragons in Super Cup and at the weekend against Lightning. But I do think for Forest it does look like an obvious problem. And if you think that the fan watching it or us watching it can spot that sort of stuff, coaches are going to find a way once again to make that difficult. But you're right, ball handling, herself and Bree Grierson, they have such a great connection outside the court. Bree with like 38 feeds in the game. She again is another one of those sort of real flair players in the league who always seems to me to be able to do something really kind of that you wouldn't expect and kind of really carry some of the attack end at times when it comes to creativity. So yeah, lots of positives for both teams. But on we go and to our third game of the round, and staying to the Midlands, should I say. It's Loughborough Lightning and LexisNexis Dragons. Been practicing that since our preview show. Lightning in the end pulled away in this game, 75-60, which I think speaks more to maybe the super shot shooting in this game. Good debut in commentary from Frankie Wells. I hadn't heard her before. I thought she was really good alongside Pamela Cookie. Team news for both teams. Lightning pretty much as you were. The one change for them was Jess Shaw. She came in at centre. Nat Panagari moved to wing defence with Beth Durant still out. For Dragons, Georgia Rowe was ill, which meant we kind of got the circle that we thought we might see anyway. Neve McCall started at shooter. Philippa Yarrington, goal attack. And I broke down the quarter scores in this game: 19-15, 17-13, 19-13, 20-19. Now, all in favour of Lightning, but that tells me that this game was a pretty close game. And I watched it back actually this morning. I thought there was a lot to like for Dragons, as great as Lightning were.
Well, I will invite you to elaborate further on that if you watched it this morning.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so what I thought was really, really good to see as far as Dragons were concerned was that the ability to be a bit unpredictable. I think for all Georgia Rowe's strengths, there is a way to set up defensively against them. And I thought the way Neve McCall and Philippa Yarrington played Lightning, particularly probably if we get through to super shot time at the end of the first half, that's when the game started to pull away just a little bit. I thought the movement in the circle just caused a problem or two, to the point where in the end Alice Harvey was moved out to goal defence, which we saw in the Super Cup. Selena Appleby Prince came on to play as goalkeeper, and I think that said everything, that Vic Burgess needed a bit more movement perhaps to keep pace with the circle. At the same time, I think we saw Sari Watkins come on. So there was just a bit more versatility in that for Dragons in the attack end. And I think that was probably the big criticism of them last season. That said, Lightning were typically clinical. Their super shot shooting seemed to me, and I haven't had a chance to spin through the numbers. We've got them, so I'm going to have a look when I throw it to you. But Ella Clark and particularly Sammy Wallace-Joseph shot really, really well from super shot range. And it just gave them the chance to pull away. And when I think Dragons started to drop off a little bit, they were taking ones, and at the same time, Ella Clark and Sammy Wallace-Joseph were shooting twos, and it just allowed the game to just pull away that little bit more.
So I have been diligent, and while you've been talking, I've got the numbers up, so I'll save you that work. Samantha Wallace, these are really impressive numbers. So Samantha Wallace-Joseph shot the super shot at 77%. She shot the 1 point at 94%. So for a total combined of 90% accuracy across both. She made 10 super shots. She scored 34 goals. Ella Clark, 100% across both. Berry Neal, 100% across both. Ella Clark shot 3 goals and 2 super shots. Not a massive volume, but all at 100%, that will do, because that combines for, 9 points. Barry Neal shot 8 goals and 3 super shots. I mean, this is why, not to labour the point, but why the Super Cup is so suited to this team.
Yeah.
Because it can do that. And across the park, only 5 unforced errors, according to these stats. Just so impressive. Really, quite clinical. And that's, I think, what we're always going to have to say about Lightning is when we're previewing them, it depends if and when they can up the volume of the super shot and crack on. But I don't want to do a disservice to Alice Harvey, who had really great innings, 8
she played
games.
well there. Sorry, I should have said that. She moved out there and she played well there.
Yeah, 4 rebounds, 6 deflections, 3 intercept, 8 gains. That's tidy work. Yeah. To that end, I thought Jackie Newton as well, just as such a stalwart for the Dragons. She ended up with 7 gains, 9 deflections, 1 intercept, 1 rebound. So, a bit like Fedoju, seems to have arms everywhere, and moves very menacingly around to get those deflections. So I actually think Dragons will be really delighted with that. I think they'll probably they'll be pleased with what they did. They'd probably be a bit annoyed that they didn't do more, because I think that is a team that's going to grow and grow and grow. And I do think Niamh McCall is just a really nice recruitment for them, just to give them those options. And then, more to come from Lightning. I can't see how that looks any different, because for now we still have Nat Panagari at wing defence, doing a lot of I think enacting the Lightning way through that mid-court really well. And then Hannah Joseph and Jess Shaw sort of split the feeding between them. And they did, literally 26 to Shaw and Joseph to 28. So when you've got 2 people, a bit like Pulse, that are going to distribute the ball into your shooters that are not going to miss, teams are going to have to work hard to unpick Lightning in this way.
I think we saw it at the Super Cup. And I think maybe when I was previewing Lightning, I was concentrating more on maybe the attack end and how Jess Shaw might kind of come in and replace Hannah Joseph at certain times. I didn't really give much thought to the idea of Nat Panagari being an incredibly strong wing defence option. Forget whether Beth Durant was available or not. She wasn't. But I do think her using Nat in that way to then have that sort of Jess Shaw, Hannah Joseph axis a little bit further up is probably something I didn't consider in terms of when you look at a 10, and we spoke a lot about 10s. It was like, I was thinking more of the shift forward rather than actually the shift back that Nat gave Lightning. And I thought she did it really, really well. She's always such a joy to watch. Her effort levels, her fitness is off the charts. And she was just really useful in that wing defence position. I think that's something to keep an eye on.
Definitely. I think that was a solid performance for Lightning, first game of the season. And also because I think maybe you said that this is a team that kind of grows as the season goes on. That felt quite a big statement. Yeah, especially in that shooting circle, my word.
Yeah, that's an early marker from that circle, especially Sammy Wallace-Joseph, wasn't it? You and I went back and forth about whether it was Sammy Wallace-Joseph or Riley Stricker as our shooter/captain. And we went with Rowley. Lightning racking up 75. I think I do think you get a change at halfway point in the season.
Well, Rowley had 11 super shots and Samantha Wallace-Joseph 10.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. We did go with that. Have the courage of our convictions. No changes. We're confident in our team. One more game to go. Birmingham Panthers against the Leeds Rhinos at what sounded like a very, very lively Worcester Arena on Saturday night. Gabby Marshall in comms alongside Lindsay Chapman. First time I'd heard Gabby in comms, and again, really nice to hear from players who are now former players. I think you and I spoke at the start of last season about wanting to give former players a platform. Other sports do it loads. Netball hasn't always had the chance, but we mentioned Frankie Wells and Gabby Marshall. Good to hear those guys in the commentary box. Rhinos coming out on top, 54-39. It felt like a game that once Rhinos got a read on what Panthers were about, and I'll caveat that by saying Panthers did make lots and lots of changes. It felt like Rhinos were always able to just hold them at arm's length, although they were never totally convincing until the final quarter. It's worth bearing out and I jotted this down, that Rhinos, even though they played together at Super Cup, 6 of the 7 were brand new in the starting lineup, and for Panthers, 4 of the 7 were brand new. We didn't know what to expect, and maybe at times it was probably as messy as we probably did expect.
Yeah, I mean, I think Simone Gordon coming in for the first game, I think that she took a minute to kind of get going.
Yep.
And find her feet.
Understandably, I think.
Understandably so. I think that's the thing. But she is really tall timber, and she did really grow into the game. They didn't shoot a super shot. She didn't attempt a super shot, which I think is really interesting because Paige Reed can do that. But we know that Harriet Jones is out, and she also is a super shooter. But I think the story of Leeds Rhinos, we have to look at the defence.
Numbers.
My word. Okay, it'd be my pleasure to give you the numbers, to be honest. Zara Everitt, she 2 pickups, 3 rebounds, 5 deflections, 3 intercepts, 8 gains, and 11 penalties. Jazz Brown, 6 penalties, very clean for a keeper, 3 rebounds, 3 deflections, 3 intercepts, 6 gains. Cassie Howard also picked up 2 deflections, 1 intercept, 2 gains, because she got a pick up in there as well. 5 penalties. Not to be outdone, Charlie Fiddler did come away with 10 gains, but she was the only person with multiple gains across the Panthers side. Izzy Kay, Alana Pullen, and Rihanna were the only other ones with 1 gain. So Charlie Fiddler doing a wealth of work for Panthers, but we'll get to them. I just think, and we kind of said, but 2 players, both on international duty for their separate teams, to come together to put a defensive performance like that together is so impressive. And to come from behind, because we were saying Panthers were leading that game, for Rhinos to do that is really impressive. And they bought their attack the supply it needed to come through in that game. And that's what we sort of said, like, if that back end can keep providing the front end ball, they can kind of get away with some of the errors that we might expect for a really new shooting end, like an incredibly new shooting end. I think also Bella Bayliss, who got player of the match.
Yeah.
I think Gabby Marshall was spot on with that one, really. I thought she was really mature in that game. 34 feeds, which is a monster work for a centre. India Massa and had 20. So I think there's lots to like for Rhinos in there. But to your point about Panthers, the bibs changed around a lot.
They did.
Like, we don't have a stat for that. I would have to go back and make a mark every time.
I
would be cross-eyed.
notes. I started making notes of who was coming on for it, but I got confused very quickly because it's happening a lot.
But really, for Panthers, it all fell apart in Q4.
Yeah, they were in it, right? Despite all the changes, they were very much in the game.
Yeah. What do you reckon? What were you thinking when you were watching it?
Yeah, I have to say, I spoke that I thought that both Izzy Kay and Alana Pullen were going to be good signings for Panthers this year. I think I've seen them play next gen netball. I think it's superbly talented. I think they showed flashes in there. I was quite surprised that Ruth Hughes, who had a good year last year, that she didn't start at centre, maybe just with that little bit of experience, because, you know, for both Izzy Kay and Alana Pullen, it was their first Super League start. And if you consider Tiana Maturu and Charlie Fiddler were also coming into the Super League for the first time, I think perhaps they missed a trick. Ruth Hughes played well when she came on as well. She was able to just kind of bring a little bit of calm at times to a bit of chaos that was going on around the court. But yeah, I just felt in the end there was a period, and I think it was in the 3rd quarter, Leeds took a tactical timeout when they were 2 goals to the good, and it felt from there that the game really switched. I think Jazz Brown got a hand in, Cassie Howard took the pick up. On the next centre pass, they forced a 3-second rule, and before you knew it, it then became a 6-point game, I think, quite quickly. And then we got into super shot time, and it was something that they were just able to hold on to and then pull away. I don't know whether maybe Lauren Palmer identified something there, but there was an immediate impact off the back of that tactical timeout that, to me, felt like the turning point in the game, and it was where Rhinos were able to just push home the advantage that I think they had, but were never able to quite pull away, which I think is to Panthers' credit, and I think is something we'll see from them going forward. I think they need to work out what their best combinations are, which is perfectly understandable. They've got a lot of new players. Leeds, you just think maybe they've got a lot of new players, but a lot of players with that bit more experience, and they were able to gel that little bit quicker. And there were no changes until I think it was the third quarter where I think Yomi Wilson came on for Samari Visser to just almost give her a breather and send her back out again. And I think the first thing Yomi Wilson did was pick up a turnover as well. So it's almost like this defensive factory that they've got up there now. Brown, Visser, Howard and Wilson, they are going to be quite the viewing this year. I can't wait to see them in person at some point.
All I could think there was just park the Ferrari for a little bit. And then
Yep.
I'm an unashamed Samarovas fan. Apologies. But the other thing that strikes me on this numbers board is Betsy Creek super shot percentage is way off what she normally does. So she's at 14% according to this. So one super shot and
there was a lot of
miss.
change though, wasn't there? There was a lot of change all over the court, but it started with sort of Tiana at goal attack and Betsy at goal shooter. Kira Rothwell came on for Tiana at the first change in the attack end. I think Tiana then came on for Betsy. And I just don't think there was ever any real consistency to that circle.
Yeah. And actually, Sonia McCloma has form swapping bibs, because I'm thinking of just now as you were talking, the Netball World Youth Cup. She pulled the changes quite a lot there as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's what it is that she's hoping to find when she pulls the changes. It'd be really, let's just see if it's something that is a pattern that develops, or if there was instructions, or because the coaches pull changes for all sorts of reasons. But you're right. Whatever it is that kind of disrupted Creek's rhythm, because normally she's quite accurate.
Yeah.
And does back herself on a super shot. So that, and every miss is a potential rebound. So, and it's interesting, some people count missed shots as unforced errors. So, what that looks like on a different stat board would be interesting. But yeah.
Carly Fiddler was an experience as well, wasn't she? I hadn't seen any of her from the ANZ, and yeah, she was here, there and everywhere at different stages of that game. Yeah, I think 17 penalties. We're going through numbers here, right? 17 penalties, 3 rebounds, 6 deflections, 6 interceptions, 10 gains. Like there was a bit of everything from her. And I think once she gets used to the Super League, she's going to be a very useful asset back there.
Absolutely. I think that was a really great debut from her, a great showcase of what she's capable of. And she also showed, great personality. I know that there's not a performance element, but that was really nice to see her getting really into it. And definitely one for other teams to keep an eye out for sure, because she can have impact. With 10 gains, that's serious work. Serious day in the office.
Yeah, that is a hell of an effort, yeah. Work in progress, Panthers, but I think quite an exciting work in progress, because there are lots of little bits and pieces all over there, and pulling it together is obviously Sonia's puzzle. And at some point this season, we'll hopefully speak to Panthers and get a bit of an idea of what they're all about.
Absolutely. And Nicole Cusack as well, just quietly in the wings.
Nicole Cusack as well, yeah. Obviously there is a lot going on there at the moment.
There is.
Okay, that's round one in the books, Chloe, and we've kind of gone through it all. But we'll take a quick spin through the weekend. I think it's pretty difficult to draw too many conclusions. So I've said, as we go through these games for round 2, we'll perhaps pick out one thing or a player or a matchup in particular, which is kind of how we did it last year, that we're looking forward to in particular. Sound okay to you?
Yeah, sounds great.
Good. We got 2 games Friday, 1 game Saturday, and 1 game Sunday. So your netball weekend is stretched long rather than concentrated into less than 24 hours, which it was last weekend.
Yeah, we would say lock in on Saturday, weren't we?
Yeah, we did. We said lock in, and by the time we started at 7:30 for Pulse, and the last game, which was the Panthers Rhinos game, finished just after 8:30. So yeah, 24 hours, 4 games of netball. Chaotic. Let's start though with the opening game of the weekend. It's Dragons against Pulse, a Friday night in Cardiff at the House of Sport, 7:00. That's a Sky Sports game. Chloe, what are you looking forward to here?
Jackie Newton on Sophie Kelly.
Okay.
I reckon that's going to be, as in that would be my matchup to watch, because I think if you're going to undo Pulse, you got to go in the attack end. And Sophie Kelly had a good game, I would say, against Thunder. Probably not her most accurate, and Jackie Newton is a menace. So I reckon that Dragons' defence could cause that Pulse attack, definitely ask it some questions, and that would probably be where you'd see the fruit of that labour would be in Jackie Newton. But I mean, you could see it across that end. It'll be interesting to see if, you know, Sam Bird after the game is saying we need to look after the ball, how they treasure that position against Dragons as well, if that's their sort of their big work on for the week, for that for sure. But I do think Dragons they won't be looking at this thinking we can't win. I think they'll be looking at this being like, we're absolutely going to have this. So I think it's going to be a really gritty game for sure. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's funny. We just spoke about Panthers and obviously trying to find their identity. We spoke in the preview that this Dragons team has an identity, and I think that should give any team who've built an identity confidence, whether you're playing the best team in the league or the worst team in the league. It's funny you said defensive end. I'm going to go at the other end. I'm quite interested to see how this kind of new look in attack for Dragons look. I was really encouraged by what I saw from Philippa Yarrington and Neve McCall, but obviously going against really, 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 really good wing defence, and then Fumi and Halley as well. I'd say at the moment in the Super League, it's as tough a challenge as there is. So how do they try and find their way around that? How do they kind of use the change up? Whether Georgia Rose fit again, because we understand that she was just ill, so she should be back in the mix. How do they use that kind of obviously really, really tall striker? Does it change what they were able to do really well, I thought, against Lightning? And are they able to build on what they were able to do against Lightning? It was what is a really tough, defensive matchup for them. So I think I'm interested to see how Dragons continue to evolve. For Pulse, I think maybe cleaning up some of the bits and pieces that they felt they needed to clean up. But broadly, I think they'll be really pleased and continue to step forward with what they've seen this season, maybe with half an eye on the fact that the Lightning game is next as well, like in round 3. So, and that's an away game. So do they have half an eye on what that looks like for them as well, and what maybe some combinations that they think they might need to put out against Lightning? I think we always talk about matchups and how do teams use games to maybe prepare for other games as well. I'll be interested to see how Pulse tackle that. But I think I'd expect a Pulse win, but I think they'll be pushed all the way by Dragons.
Yeah, and whether or not Pulse use their bench a bit more. So they brought out Maseko sort of briefly in Q3, but they've got Darcy Everett at the back there. That could be an option as well to try, for sure. So yeah, it'd be. I thinking about Dragons here because they've got Pulse and then they've got Thunder the week after. Is that right? So what a run!
They've got a really tough start to the season, which you can't help the way the cards fall for you. But there was so many positives I thought against Lightning. If they can take more of the same against Pulse and get a result in that game, then they've got nothing to fear. They certainly won't fear it, as you said, straight off the bat.
So then the other game on Friday,
yes,
Rhinos versus Lightning. That's in Sheffield, 7:30 on Sky Sports. So
can I make a prediction before we pick out our things to look forward to? My prediction is that in next week's review, you are going to be talking about Samory Visser.
That doesn't sound like me, Paul.
I think you're going to pick her out for Chloe's tactics board. That's what I'm going to say.
Oh, you know what? It would be a good one.
Against Lightning.
I won't. Yes. Look, I think, how can you not fancy that Jazz Brown on Samantha Wallace-Joseph and Samory Visser having a go, Ella Clark and Berry Nail? Like, I think that's going to be so amazing. For me, it's more Rhinos' front end against Alice Harvey and Shadeen Fanamurva and Selena Appleby Prince. That's going to be the tough bit And if we see, Alice Harvey out a goal attack on Paige Reed or Harriet Jones, like that's going to be a tough day in the office. But it's kind of hard to call in a sense of where I think the game will go. As I said earlier, like, will Lightning be able to shoot the lights out on this one or not, basically, and whether or not they grind their way through it or whether they're able to punish Rhinos' errors early, I think. Because I think naturally with Rhinos, there's just going to still be errors in that as they adjust to Simone Gordon and figure out their way through. And also for Lauren Palmer, how she wants to rotate her circle as well, because she hasn't really had a chance to do that yet with Harriet Jones having been out.
Yeah.
So, yes, I mean, that Rhinos defense is so cool. But I don't know. How about you? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm going to pick a player out in this one. I'm going to pick Bella Bayliss because obviously she will go up against a Lightning team she knows quite well. I think we were all quite surprised that maybe we didn't see more of Bella Bayliss last year. First viewing last week, really encouraging debut, player of the match, as you mentioned. I'm really keen to see how she goes because for all the talk of the defensive end and for all the couple of questions that we still need to work out at the attack end, just how those pieces fit together. And we hope Harriet Jones is back because that then does give a bit of variety. I do think that Bella Bayliss, India Massa kind of connection might be something that we secretly fall in love with a lot over the course of the season. The early signs are encouraging. But India Massa was, a really useful player last year, considering the environment she was thrown into. But Bella Bayliss, I think you always look to when you're going up against a former team to prove a point, and she's got really cool and early opportunity to do that. So I've picked out Bella Bayliss to watch on Friday night.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Thank you. Saturday, one game on Saturday, the BBC's game at 5:00. Manchester Thunder versus London Mavericks. Bellevue, the venue. What are you looking forward to here? Player, matchup, what in particular?
Jamie Golob and Lois Pearson.
Okay.
I reckon. And also, I quite like the look of Susie Liversidge and Taylor McKevitt down the other end. Yeah, look, Mavericks, the last time they were there at the Bellevue, it was quite a big semi-final defeat.
Yeah.
And they were a bit war-torn in the sense of, they were struggling with their injuries. Thunder were just recuperating on theirs. And I do think if Nicola Smith kind of comes out buoyed by the performance that she'd had against Pulse, then the Mavericks front end is in for a bit of a tough one, because she's got that range that I think could be quite difficult if there's a lot of in and out ball, if there's shooter passing. I think Nicola Smith will fancy herself on some of those. Hard not to look past Thunder. Mavericks will not go down easily, I think I'll say, as my prediction for that one. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it seems obvious because we've spent such a long time talking about it, but seeing what another bunch of training sessions has done for that Thunder squad, it was pretty clear from Karen afterwards. She felt there had been some strides made last week. Well, okay, how many more strides can you make this week in front of a really lively crowd? We know that Thunder always put on a show in front of their own fans who'll make it difficult for Mavericks. So how much more can kind of Thunder learn inside another week, and how much more do those combinations across the court grow? I'd be interested to see the starting lineup as well. Obviously, we started with Elle Cardwell and Sophie Fawns. Didn't take too long for Lois Pearson to kind of shift early in the second half, and we saw Lois Pearson at goal attack. We saw Nat Metcalf come on. Emma Rayner also into the mix. So Thunder have got a lot of options. So how they line up, I think I'm interested to see. I think that's what I'll go, because I think Thunder have got such a strong squad. How they put that 7 together is something that I'm interested to see evolve over the first few weeks of the season and kind of settle down into the sort of combinations that they're keen to move forward with.
I want to shout out Emma Rayner a little bit, because also I thought she had really great impact when she came on in that Pulse game. And to be in that environment, as having just made your England debut, and then to sort of be with a Sophie Fawns, Elle Cardwell, Natalie Metcalf, Lois Pearson, there's going to be so much to learn and
Yeah.
experience, but also you belong in there as well. Like, I
Yeah,
do think that
definitely. Yeah.
Emma Rayner actually very much has a place to kind of sort of say like, oh, well, I know you guys are all here and you have great experience, but I think that's a really, if done positively, that environment can be so great to sort of accelerate her kind of development. And we know that Mavericks are still without Ratu. So is Phillips in centre again? If she is, like, Amy Carter is a tough test, but Rayner would also be a really great challenge as well. So absolutely, I think like you, the 7 for Thunder is, I think in any preview that we're going to do, it's going to be really interesting to see,
Yeah.
how they play it. But yeah, I think this
It
will be a
feels
good
like
game.
that might almost be our when we review Thunder for the first few weeks of the season. It's like, okay, what did we make of that starting 7, or what did we make of those combinations there? Because the options are so strong and so rich. Like it's almost an embarrassment of riches, right? And it's like how do you kind of piece those puzzles together? And maybe a little bit like lightning, that will grow over the season goes as the season goes, and then bang, you're into the final four, and you fancy your chances in any given kind of set of circumstances, which we said that we think all three teams will do.
Very much.
Final game, final thing to look forward to: Nottingham Forest against Birmingham Panthers, Motorpoint Arena, Midlands Derby, 2 o'clock on Sky Sports on Sunday.
Mm. You can go first.
Okay, thank you. I will be interested to see if Panthers make as many changes as they did. And I mean right off the bat, right? Because I think my surprise was that we saw Izzy K and Alana Pullen start and they weren't kind of eased into it. Do we think there is maybe a scenario where we see Ruth Hughes from the start, we see Kira Rothwell from the start? There are maybe options that could give Panthers a little bit more security from the start. And I think they might need it against Forest, because I think if Forest start fast here, I could see the game blowing out quite quickly, given this is probably the most consistent starting 7 from last season to this season, and the team that is in the most state of flux in the shape of Panthers. So I wonder if Sonia and Nicole might lean a little bit more into the experience and maybe just try and slow the game down to start with.
Yeah. I like the idea of Charlie Fiddler going up against Rolene Stricker, because it feels like that's a goalkeeper that Rolene hasn't come up against yet, and she was really
True.
effective.
Yeah.
Albeit on a real debutante in Simone Gordon, but that could be just an interesting challenge for Stricker to just take on the keeper that this league has. But I do think you have to favour Forest coming into this, and
Yeah.
whether we might see Anya Williams get her debut in the Garibaldi Red, as Kath Mary likes to point out, and it is, so we will say that. But yeah, I think
I like that Forest kit, by the way, with the pinstripe in it. It's cool.
it's very cool, very very cool. I like their imagery, their graphics, their merch. Forest are coming
Yeah.
out really strong on that front. Side point. But I do think also really interested to see how Dixon responds to her shooting from this game into the next one. Is she still going to be putting them up?
Yeah,
We'll see.
I think it's that is such an interesting point for Forest, because it's the same as last year. If week 1 is anything to go by, Anya Williams, I think, is probably definitely, because she's in the England squad, is further along in her development than Freya Henshaw is. So how long do we give it before we see that as a shooting circle that might be the option for them going forward? And what effect does that have on Rolene, who's obviously been, alongside Sammy and Liv Sheen, the most consistent shooter, like in terms of being able to start in that position and then just know what you've got coming around you. Rolene has kind of carried that circle a lot of the time for Forest. So yeah, that's a good one, actually. I think seeing what Rhea Dixon's able to put out, and it is such a difficult thing. We said this all the way through last year, because she adds so much to them as a player, but as a shooting option, it's very clearly something that is a tricky one for them to negotiate.
Definitely. So a good set of games there, Paul.
They are a good set of games, actually. Yeah, I think interesting. What do we think is going to be our the big game? Do we think it's going to be Rhinos Lightning?
Or probably Thunder Mavericks, no? I to put Thunder back in
Both,
that box again. But I think, yeah, I think you're right.
I wouldn't be
I think both.
surprised again if it's either of them, and we'll make our decision on what gets the full treatment in due course. Production meetings will be had.
I think I have an answer already for the production meeting, but maybe we'll take that offline.
We'll take that off. Yeah, let's take that offline. Yeah. Any other business before we wrap up?
Any other business? No. I think now
No?
that we've had that statement
Yeah,
about
that's good
the
to hear. In
streaming.
week one, I know it's frustrating for everybody. We all ask people to be accountable. We have been. The proof will be in the pudding, right? We said that all the way through last year. So it's a shame we've had to say it after week one, but let's see what this weekend's games look like.
Absolutely. And I think otherwise, no, Paul, I think we're calling it a day.
I think we'll call it a day. So, as usual, thank you to everybody for listening and subscribing where you have. A couple of little points of order. We are closing in on 1,000 Instagram followers, which is pretty mind blowing. We have 16 people in our Netball Unlocked League, and we've gone above 100 subscribers on YouTube, which, hold our hands up here. YouTube hasn't been our primary focus. This is an audio medium at the moment, but we are hoping to slightly develop what we're doing there, make it look a little bit better, make it kind of feel a little bit more like a YouTube offering. So for those who've stuck with us, we'll hopefully continue to evolve. Keep supporting us, and we'll speak to you next time.